Add formal charges as necessary to the following structure. All unshared valence electrons are shown. What is the overall charge on the species? So let me write down this species. Okay, so now I'm just going to write out the equation for formal charge. So, formal charge is equal to the number of valence electrons minus the number of non-bonding electrons minus the number of bonding electrons divided by 2. And now we're going to do each atom one by one. So first let's look at oxygen. Okay, so its number of valence electrons is 6. The number of non-bonding electrons, so let's look at the lone pairs right here that aren't participating in the bonding. You'll see that there are 6 of them as well. And then you'll see that there are 2 electrons that are involved in each bond. So I'm just going to divide that by 2. And then we end up with a formal charge of -1. So I'm just going to write the charge in for the oxygen. Now let's look at the nitrogen. So for the formal charge of nitrogen, nitrogen's valence electrons are only 5. If you look at the structure, you'll see that there are no non-bonding electrons. So I'm just going to write 0. And then if you count how many electrons are involved in the bonding, so in all the bonds, each one it has 2, and there's 4 of them. So there are 8 bonding electrons divided by 2. So basically it's 5 minus 4. And then nitrogen has a +1 formal charge. So I'm also going to write that in. So everything makes sense so far. But I'm also going to do the formal charge of carbon, just for good measure. So for carbon, there are 4 valence electrons. There are no non-bonding electrons. And then the number of bonds to carbon are 4, so there are 8 bonding electrons involved, divided by 2. So you end up with 4 minus 4. So the formal charge on carbon is 0. And the overall charge of our species is just going to be neutral, so it'll be 0 as well. That's because the oxygen is -1 and the nitrogen is +1. so they cancel each other out. Okay, so let's look at the answer from our junior tutor. Okay, so it looks like they calculated the formal charge of ozone. So the work looks correct, but for this question in particular, it is incorrect since it's a different structure altogether. So I'm just gonna write out what I did. Okay, so I wrote out the formal charge of oxygen is -1, formal charge of nitrogen is +1, formal charge of the carbons is 0, where formal charge is equal to valence electrons minus non-bonding electrons minus bonding electrons divided by 2, and then the overall charge of the species is 0. So the work